What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Adidas Dropset 3. All right, so these are the third iteration of Adidas's dedicated strength training shoe, the Dropset series. I reviewed the Dropset 1s and 2s. I actually really liked the 2s. I liked them so much that I put them in my top 5 training shoes of 2023. With the Dropset 3, we have the same tooling as the Dropset 2, so you might see some similarities in the way that they look, but there are a lot of quality of life changes with the Dropset 3. So let's take a look at them, starting with the upper of the shoe. We have a new heat-ready knit upper in comparison to the more like open mesh from last year. And this upper is a lot more, I want to say, high quality feeling in my opinion. I think it feels a lot more premium, a lot nicer. And one of the things that I really liked about this upper in comparison to last year's upper, which I also liked, is that you can't feel it on top of your toes as much as you could feel the mesh from last year's. The mesh didn't want to bend as easily as this knit material. So around the front of the shoe, we have a TPU overlay for your toe bumper, and that's going to give you a little bit more structure in that area to give you some protection for jamming your toes into the ground while you're doing burpees. We also have a little bit of raised outsole right at the tip of the shoe to give you a little bit more durability in that area as well. Coming around to the lateral side, we have the 3 stripes that are an overlay on top of the knit material that also kind of serve as some kind of structure in that area. Around the eye stays, we have that same kind of TPU overlay that you find on the toe bumper, and that's to give that area structure now that these shoes do not have like a webbed lacing pattern like they did in the last year's model. One thing that does return with the Dropset 3 is the adjustable lacing system, so that you can really customize the fits around the instep of your foot. I personally have to do that just because I have kind of skinny ankles. I always lace these a little bit further down, and it really gives me a lockdown fit there. Now coming around the back part of the shoe, we have the GeoFit ankle collar, and you're gonna notice that in all of these little foam pods that kind of surround the ankle part of the shoe, it actually says GeoFit right in the inside there. And what that's there for is to give you a more lockdown fit for your heel and just generally make the back part of the shoe fit better. I didn't have any heel slip issues on the Dropset 2, but I do notice that with the Dropset 3, my heel stays in place a lot better. Now let's take a look at one of the most eye-catching features of the Dropset 3, and that is its sidewalls. We have a large lateral sidewall that's made out of TPU at the heel part, or closer to the heel portion of the shoe. And what that's there for is to give you more stability and make sure that you're not spilling over the sides of your shoes when you're doing your lifts. And then on the medial side, we have one that's closer to the middle part of the shoe, and that makes sure that the midfoot stays in place when you're doing your lifts. This is actually made out of Adidas 6 rubber. It actually has more of a tacky feel to that, and I felt like that gave me better traction when I was doing my rope climbs. I wouldn't say that these are the end-all, be-all best rope climbing shoes, but that did give me some extra help when I was doing my rope climbs. Now taking a look at the midsole of the Dropset 3s, we have a dual density midsole design. So we have a softer forefoot foam, and then we have a more dense heel foam. You can actually touch it and feel that one is much softer than the other. The forefoot is soft so that you can have a little bit more comfort when you're doing your sprints, your bounding movements like jump roping. And then the heel is dense so that you don't lose any power transfer when you're doing your lifting movements. And like the Dropset 2s, the Dropset 3s still have a 6mm offset from heel to toe. Now taking a look at the outsole of the shoe, we have a flat contact outsole with that Adidas 6 rubber at the forefoot, and then we have traction rubber at the heel of the shoe. We've got a couple breaks here to kind of differentiate the two kind of materials, and the grip on this shoe, in my use, was excellent. I thought the grip on these shoes was standout These little grooves in the forefoot make it so that the forefoot flexes a little bit easier. We also have the torsion system midfoot shank, which has a ventilation panel that's cut into it so that your feet breathe easier with that heat-ready design. But you're also probably not gonna wanna wear these on rainy days because you're sure to get water in there if you go running around in puddles. There are also some cutouts in the insole, which are anatomically molded and actually pretty comfortable. One thing that I noticed with the Dropset 3s in comparison to the Dropset 2s, which is a huge upgrade, was that I didn't notice these holes on the bottom of my feet. On the Dropset 2s, I could really feel them. With the Dropset 3s, they're not noticeable at all. So since we get a more substantial upper and more cushioning around the ankle collar, the Dropset 3s do weigh a little bit more than the Dropset 2s. It's not that much more. I got the Dropset 2s in a size 10.5 at 13.1 ounces, and I measured the same size in the Dropset 3s at 13.7 ounces. All right, when going to size your Dropset 3s, I'm gonna recommend that you possibly size them a half size down. They do run a little bit bigger than the Dropset 2s, and that's because the toe box has a ton of space in it. This is a wide fitting shoe. I don't think that anybody, even the most widest feet people out there, are gonna have any issues with the way that the Dropset 3s fit. It says that they designed the upper to accommodate feet swelling. In my situation, even after a longer workout, I still felt like that my feet had a little bit more space than I would generally like with the Dropset 3s. I got them in the same size that I got my Dropset 2s, which is a 10.5. I felt like the 2s were already pretty wide and they fit my feet great. The Dropset 3s are really wide on my feet and they're still plenty usable, but I did have a little bit of extra space, more than I would like with my training shoes. Usually an issue with shoes that have higher sidewalls is that you can kind of feel them pressing up against your feet depending on the shoe. With the Dropset 3s, that was never an issue. So if you're somebody that usually runs into problems with the medial guard pushing into the bottom of your feet, that's not an issue with these shoes. I thought that the width from the toe box all the way back to the heel was very accommodating and super comfortable. And once again, the GeoFit ankle collar gives you a nice heel lockdown so you don't have any kind of issues with heel slip. So just to recap on sizing, if you are somebody that has a wider foot, I'm gonna recommend that you go with your normal training shoe size. You're gonna get a really nice fit with the Dropset 3s. If you're somebody that has kind of a narrow foot, then I might recommend a half size down with your Dropset 3s. And then if you're somebody that just doesn't know, then I would also just go with your normal training shoe size with these and you'll have a comfortable fit. When it comes to running, I thought the Dropset 3s were actually pretty decent, at least for all the short sprints and runs that you'd find in a typical CrossFit workout. I never take my training shoes on really long runs, but I did take the Dropset 3s up to a 1,000 meter run, and I thought that they did just fine. The upper moves very well. It's super comfortable. The forefoot foam is great for somebody like me that has a mid forefoot strike. And generally, I thought that these felt more agile than you would expect them to feel. And even though the forefoot foam is softer, I never noticed any lack of response when I was doing my box jump movements or any kind of burpees. My feet stayed very comfortable when I was doing pretty much anything when it came to body weight. All right, so what good would a training shoe be if you weren't able to lift in it? I really liked lifting in the Dropset 3s. One of the standout features with these shoes was the amount of grip that they had. The grip and ground feel with these shoes is excellent. I never noticed my feet were sliding around when I'd hit my landings. I would always land very planted, and I was also able to drive very hard off the ground. There was no lack of power delivery with the Dropset 3s, and I even wore these for a 3 rep max back squat at 405, expecting them to not do that great, and they blew my mind with how responsive they were. Usually with something that has a little bit taller of a heel, I'd notice some kind of muddiness, but not with the Dropset 3s. I actually felt extremely stable and planted when I was doing my squats in these shoes. Obviously, with something that has a higher heel, deadlifts are not gonna be ideal of a movement to do, but I still thought that these shoes handled deadlifts well enough. I wouldn't be going for any kind of 1 rep maxes with these shoes just because they have a slightly taller heel, and that's just generally not something that you want for deadlifting. But when it came to the weights that you would find in a normal WOD, I thought that these did just fine. Another standout feature while lifting in the Dropset 3s was how well the sidewalls kept my foot in place when doing high torque movements. The movement in mind is a devil's press, which is a burpee into a dual dumbbell snatch. It's notorious for making your feet twist and turn inside of a shoe, and that was not the case with the Dropset 3s. I felt like my foot stayed planted and made it generally easier to do probably the worst movement in CrossFit. I was already a fan of the Dropset 2s, and I thought that they were a contender for top training shoe already. Adidas basically took that shoe, refined it, and came out with the Dropset 3s. If you're somebody that didn't get to try out the Dropset 2s, then just go ahead and pick up the 3s because they basically took that and just made it into a just better shoe overall. If you're somebody that has the Dropset 2 and you already like the Dropset 2s, then you probably don't need to get the Dropset 3s, but if you're just like somebody that's a fan of the shoe in general, you probably owe it to yourself to try out these shoes. I think that the Dropset 3s are easily one of the best training shoes that you can get at the moment. They do everything really well. There's no weaknesses with the Dropset 3. If anything, it would probably be the weight of the shoe, but even still, that's kind of like just being nitpicky. So if you're looking for an all-encompassing training shoe, then I would recommend that you give the Dropset 3 some strong consideration. This is a shoe that can really do it all. There's no glaring faults, and I think that pretty much anybody that puts these shoes on are gonna be very satisfied with the performance they bring to the table. So if you guys have any questions about the Dropset 3, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.